Welcome back to the Get Up, Show Up, Never Give Up podcast, the place where truth doesn't apologize, growth gets loud, and you get to reclaim everything that life, pain, or people tried to shrink inside of you. Let's get straight into it. Have you ever been told you're too intense, you feel too deeply, you care too much, you're too ambitious, you expect too much? They said it like it was an insult, like your capacity for passion, purpose, and depth was a problem. And for a long time, maybe you believed it was. But what if the truth is this? You weren't too much. They were too small. Not small in worth, small in vision, small in capacity, small in emotional range, small in the courage it takes to hold someone powerful without trying to dim them down. This episode is for everyone who has ever been told to tone it down, shrink it back, calm it down, or stay small just to be accepted. This is your invitation to unlearn every ounce of shame around your fullness. Because the world never needed less of you. It needed more of your fire, more of your boldness, more of your too much. Let's get into it. Why too much isn't a flaw. Let's talk psychology. The term too much is often weaponized against individuals who embody traits that trigger discomfort in emotionally avoidant or emotionally immature people. According to Dr. Lindsay Gibson, author of Adult Children of Emotional Immature Parents, people who lack emotional depth often label others as too much, even when they feel out of control, exposed, or overwhelmed by emotional intimacy or intellectual challenge. In her research, emotional immature individuals respond to others' strength, depth, or expression with withdrawal or criticism, not because you're wrong, but because your presence demands growth they're not ready for. So, what happens next? You begin internalizing reflection as a need to change. You believe the lie that if you were just a little quieter, a little less passionate, a little more agreeable, you'd finally be accepted. But here's what's really happening. You've outgrown the room. You're not too much. You're just too whole for spaces built to hold fragments. Research insight number 1, the double bind effect. A 2019 Harvard Business Review article described what's called the double bind effect, where people, especially women and emotionally intelligent individuals, are penalized socially when they show assertiveness or emotional leadership. If you lead boldly, you're too aggressive. If you're compassionate, you're too emotional. If you dream big, you're delusional. If you hold standards, you're difficult. Translation, you can't win in rooms that are committed to misunderstanding you. Implementation tip. Stop negotiating your identity to gain partial acceptance. Instead, start curating spaces, relationships, and opportunities that are built for your whole self, not a diluted version of you. How they project their limitations onto you. Let's go deeper. Most of the time, the people who told you that you were too much were actually saying, "You make me uncomfortable with my own limitations." Think about that. Your ability to feel deeply reminded them of everything they suppress. Your ambition highlighted their complacency. Your standards confronted their shortcuts. Your healing revealed their avoidance. Your fire exposed their numbness. Insecure people don't resent you because you're too much. They resent you because you're evidence that more is possible, and that unsettles them a little bit. Research insight number 2, mirror theory in social psychology. According to a 2021 University of California study on social mirroring, individuals tend to negatively judge traits in others that reflect parts of themselves they haven't accepted or developed. That means someone calling you too loud, too intense, or too high maintenance might actually be revealing their emotional blind spots, not your flaws. You weren't the problem. You were the mirror. And mirrors are uncomfortable when someone's not ready to look at themselves. Implementation framework, the 3-part mirror reset. If this resonated, here's a 3-step way to reclaim your truth after years of being labeled as too much. Step 1, identify the projection. Ask yourself, is this feedback based on truth, or is it a reflection of their discomfort? If someone critiques your depth, your drive, or your emotional presence, pause before absorbing it. Ask, do I really need to shrink, or do they need to stretch? Step 2, reaffirm your identity out loud. This might sound simple, but it's deeply powerful. Speak it aloud or write it down. I am not too much. I am just not for everyone, and that's not only okay, it's sacred. Step 3, recalibrate your rooms. If your truth feels too much, the room is too small. Not you. You are not obligated to make people comfortable at the expense of your own authenticity. You are, however, responsible for protecting your peace. Here's a quick recap. Being labeled too much is often a reflection of others' limitations. Social psychology proves we're often mirrors to those around us. Choosing to stay whole rather than shrink is an act of power. The trauma of shrinking yourself. Let's talk about what actually happens when you chronically shrink yourself. Because when you're constantly being told you're too much, your nervous system starts to adjust. You begin to mute yourself, not just emotionally, but biologically. You stutter your truth. You whisper your desires. You silence your instincts. You filter your joy. You apologize for your emotions. And over time, that becomes who you think you are. But it's not. It's trauma, specifically fawning trauma. Research insight number 3, fawning as a survival response. According to therapist and trauma expert Pete Walker, fawning is one of the 4 core trauma responses, alongside fight, flight, and freeze. Fawning is when you over-accommodate, over-please, over-apologize, or over-adapt to avoid conflict or rejection. It's the trauma response of someone who learned early on that being fully themselves wasn't safe. Emotional expression led to disconnection. Standing tall got them punished, not praised. So instead, you chose survival. And survival looked like being easy to be around, being agreeable, playing small, avoiding confrontation, making yourself digestible. But here's the truth. You don't owe the world digestibility. You owe the world authenticity. And the people who are meant for you, they don't choke on your truth. They're nourished by it. What happens in the body when you suppress who you are? This isn't just spiritual, it's psychological and physiological. Studies from Stanford University's Department of Psychology have shown that chronic self-suppression, the habit of withholding thoughts, feelings, and expression, leads to elevated cortisol, which is the stress hormone, lower immune response, increased risk of anxiety and depression, digestive issues, sleep disruption, cognitive fatigue. In other words, pretending to be less than you are is making you sick. Every time you silence your voice to make others comfortable, your body keeps the score. As Dr. Bessel van der Kolk says in his landmark book, The Body Keeps the Score. Trauma is not just an event that took place in the past. It is also the imprint left by that experience on mind, brain, and body. Suppressing your truth, your ambition, your boldness, just to maintain harmony in relationships that require you to betray yourself is trauma repetition. You're reliving the original wound over and over again, hoping for a different outcome. But here's the catch. Healing doesn't happen through shrinking. Healing happens when you return to yourself unapologetically. How to reclaim the parts you silenced. So how do we undo the damage? How do you start believing that your too muchness is actually your brilliance? Let's go through it step by step. Step 1, acknowledge the origin. Ask yourself, when did I first learn that being all of me wasn't okay? Was it a parent who told you to stop crying so much? A partner who said you're too sensitive? A boss who dismissed your ideas because they were too ambitious? A group of friends who made you feel like you had to tone it down to fit in? Name the origin. Why? Because healing starts with awareness. You can't heal what you haven't identified. Step 2, write a permission slip. This might feel silly, but it's powerful. Grab a pen and write this out. I give myself full permission to take up space emotionally, physically, creatively, and spiritually. I release the shame of being too much and reclaim the truth that I was never meant to be small. Read that every single morning. Say it before you walk into rooms that once made you feel invisible. Step 3, practice taking up space. This isn't a concept, it's a muscle. And like any muscle, it has to be worked consistently. Ways to practice. Speak up in that meeting, even if your voice shakes. Share your real opinion, even if it contradicts the room. Post that content that feels too bold. Wear the outfit that turns heads. Say no without over-explaining. Cry without apology. Laugh loudly and dream out loud. Every time you stretch that muscle, your nervous system rewires. Every time you show up without the mask, your identity recalibrates. Let me say this clearly. Not everyone will like the real you. Some people fell in love with your silence. Some people benefited from your self-betrayal. Some people loved the version of you that stayed small so they could feel big. When you stop shrinking, they will call you selfish. When you set boundaries, they will call you cold. But when you get louder, they will call you arrogant. When you stop apologizing, they will call you ungrateful. That's not a sign to stop. That's a sign that you're finally becoming visible to the right people and threatening to the wrong ones. You weren't too much. You were just misplaced. It's not your job to convince the wrong people of your worth. It's your job to walk boldly until the right ones recognize you by your fullness. Let me end with this. You weren't sent here to be less. You weren't sent here to dilute your passion, question your emotions, or apologize for your fire. You were sent here to disrupt, to elevate, to stretch, to be an example of what it looks like when someone refuses to shrink. So this is your permission slip. Be bold, be loud, be soft, be deep, be loving, be demanding, be wild, be still, be visionary, be emotional, be all of it. Because the right people won't just handle you, they'll honor you.